Hi, good afternoon. First, let me welcome you. If you're watching the replay, don't forget to like the page or click subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, so that the next time it's running, you will get a notification. Now, for everyone who's joining me live, welcome. First, let me run the intro. Okay, so today's episode is for, of course, mid to senior level professionals. Now, there's a difference between how you would approach answering interview questions from when you're junior to early mid level, um, and when you are mid to senior looking to move to executive level. And today I'm examining a few of those questions and sharing with you a few tested approaches, great approaches to answering those questions. But before I do that, there are a couple of tips you should bear in mind when you're approaching a senior level interview, right? What they're assessing for at senior level is not the mechanics of the role. Yes, there's the assumption that you understand the role, you're great at the role, but if you're being brought in at leadership position, right, at a relatively senior level, they're they're assessing for your ability to look at things from a strategic, not a tactical perspective. A lot of the time, especially when you're really great at what you do, sometimes people forget it, right? But the very, very first thing in all your answers, in every history that you share, in every example that you give, is be strategic. Let me pull up my notes. So, what do I mean by be strategic? Well, I mean, you start from the big picture. You are looking, it's as I'm assuming, of course, that you've researched the company, you've researched the role, you're comfortable in your knowledge of those dynamics. Now, in answering questions, you're coming at it from, what does this mean for the organization? When I do stuff in this role, how does it impact the organization, right? The strategic objectives, the market, the customers, the entire workforce, as an example. So where they're not looking for answers for details about your even though that they are important, they're looking for whether you really know the business, whether you understand how it all fits together. So let's say I've applied for role of HR director. As HR director, my answers must demonstrate that I understand um why this company is in business, the whole value chain. How do they deliver value to the market? What challenges are they facing in the market? How does their workforce strategy, as an example, impact their ability to compete, or give them an advantage? And all my answers must come from that point of view. So let's stay inside that example of HR director interview. So they ask me, what makes me great, what would make me great, a great choice for that HR director role. I will not respond, or I should not respond with, well, I understand the whole talent management process, right from recruiting through to plugging in. Of course you understand it, it's given, right? Your answer should say, well, given that you're this type of company, here's the current landscape in the market, here are the challenges your competitors are facing, you yourself, here are your strengths. Therefore, I from a HR point of view, um doing securing the right type of talent source, as an example, what levers you will pull to manage performance, and how that feeds into maintaining this specific competitive advantage. Are you following me? You need to demonstrate that you are thinking of the business at their level, at board level, or at management level, not at, oh, let me just do my job within this function. Once you become a manager, whether it's mid to senior level, You are now a partner with the business, right? So you have to be able to demonstrate that, oh, I understand the business you are in. I understand how you deliver value. I understand how it all fits together. And I understand how my role fits in, right? And how certain actions that I take, the cause and effect, right, between what I do in this role and how it impacts your overall performance and where you're going. You must know the business. So think company, not role. Strategy. Okay, so that's the first tip. Now, the second tip is you must then, as you're answering, shift perspectives. So there's a little context to this. Now, I mean, I'm sure you've heard before that a lot of the time people take the behavioral approach and with past behavior being a predictor of future performance, right? And I mean, your coach or in preparing for an interview would have taken you through, oh, use the STAR approach. What was the situation? What was the task? What actions did you take? What results did you get? Right? And that's all well and good. But that's not good enough for senior level, right? Because when you're answering your questions, they want to see how you've done it in the past to give them a sense of comfort. And when you're giving that answer, they're in evaluative mode. They're listening to hear, okay, what was the impact? What were the benefits? What are the things this person is saying that tells us they've done it before and they can do it again? It may be okay for a junior role, but it is not okay for a senior role. What you want to do is shift perspective. You want to move the conversation from an evaluative conversation to a conversation facing the future. You want them to spend majority of you want them to come out of the interview, one, convinced that you have the track record, of course, but you want them to spend more of the time envisioning how you will do in that role, making it concrete for them as against dwelling on past. So it is, speak to the future, not just the past. You start from the past, yes, right? But as soon as you can, you switch to envisioning. So let me give you an example. Let me think of an example. Okay, so they'll say, so tell us about a complex project that you have delivered in the past as an example. And you start out with, well, I can talk about so and so project, right? Let me see. The last transformational project I led at my current organization. Remember, you're starting from strategic. So where the organizational objective was to do this, or these were the circumstances. Therefore, there was a need to do this. And I did that, right? And this had the impact. Right. But more importantly, looking at your organization, if I were looking to do an organizational transformation, here's 1, 2, 3 that here's how I would go about it, right? And here's the impact is likely to have. That way you're answering the full question. Because the reason why they're asking you the past is so that they can be able to better situate you in the future, help them make the connection. So remember, to be able to demonstrate or speak to the benefits you bring and the impact you've had, of course, you must address the past using your behavioral question and answer technique. But do not stop there. You must take it further to how would I apply it to your context, and what kind of impact do I anticipate making when I apply it like that. One more tip before we move on from there is when you discussing your accomplishments, right? Speak to, especially around people, but generally speak to impact, not mechanics. So if I was talking about recruiting, right, and talking about I was able to set up market breaking recruitment campaign for a customer who was coming fresh into the market, right? If I was at a lower level, I would say, well, it entailed advertising. In that advertising, we attracted over 4,000 applications. Then we screened and we did, simultaneous simultaneous selection process, and we're able to process, very rapidly, and conclude at least the initial screening and interviews within one day. And from the pool of 100 people that we gave them, they were able to pick 50 people who have stayed and gone on to become, to do well in the business, several have become managers. That is a recruitment specialist answer. A HR director's answer would be, right? Oh, my client had so and so market share where they are coming from. Coming into the Nigerian market, they were, faced with the challenge of this. The space was young, there was not that much available talent, and they were breaking into a new market. Therefore, I recommended 1, 2, 3, 4 strategies, strategies in our approach to quickly get people. And subsequently, we created a campaign around these 4 strategic, actions, and the campaign was successful. We went through the processes, and then we went on and we picked these people who have achieved this impact. Now, the successful execution there meant that my client, successfully launched into the Nigerian market space, and within 1 year were able to make this impact. And I went on to work with them to expand to other locations in West Africa, in Ghana, in Lome, whatever. Can you see the difference between both answers? Always remember, at senior level, you are partnering the business. You're not just focusing on your role. So shift perspectives. Future, not past. Impact, not mechanics. Of course, sometimes they can go ahead and say, tell us exactly how you did it. That's fantastic. Then you answer. But you want to situate them as much as possible in the strategic and in the future. Next tip, use your story sequence, right? So remember that the purpose of your answers in an interview is to paint a vivid picture, right? A realistic picture. Help them see, and help them see with evidence. That's why we keep referring to what was your track record. Now, in telling your stories, or in giving your examples, or even in responding to questions, remember I said strategic. You must start from strategy and then build down and then drill down to tactics. As much as possible, you want to keep the conversation in the upper part. Yes, they can speak to detail, but detail, the more granular the detail, the more those are the people you're supposed to manage. You are supposed to be heading, like, lead, driving a function. So let me give you an example. I mean, the example I've just given, right, also works for it. Whatever question that they're asking you, first of all, start from what was the broad landscape? What was the organizational objective? Or what did the market look like? Then start to drill down, right? Or start from the organizational challenge was this, and this is what was going on in the market at the time. Therefore, we recognized it, and I was tasked with the responsibility to do this so that the organization could do that, right? All the time pointing to your, role at strategic level. And then you drive down to, therefore, I came up with 1, 2, 3. Came up with 1, 2, 3, 4 plan, which I executed using 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're now drilling down to micro. Which I used. Sorry. So came up with 1, 2, 3, 4 plan, which I executed like this. And here was the impact, and here were the benefits, right? So again, question, how would you tackle the hiring? We need to hire 500 people within the next 3 months. How would you go about hiring it, right? So you start from strategic. What's the strategic objective you're trying to achieve? Where are the talent sources in the market? Before you now come, therefore, what approach must we use if we want to find that type of talent? Then you come down to, what are the internal resources? Then you now start to drill down. What kind of help we need? What approach should we use, etc.? Always start from big picture and drill down. So strategy first, not tactics. They might come back and ask you a few tactical questions. In the event that they do, then answer those tactical questions, but don't drive to tactics immediately, right? So that is for that tip. Let's move to the next one. All right. So this one works for anybody, everybody. The whole point of an interview is to interview you, right? So when they ask you a question, it's important to pause and assess the question behind the question, right? So when, for instance, a very popular example I use is tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself is not, oh, I just met you socially and we're exchanging, we're just saying, oh, we'd like to meet you. Tell me about yourself within an interview setting is tell us why you are the right person if you drill down to the reason behind it. So whenever they ask you a question, ask yourself first, what attributes, of course, related to the job. I mean, I'm assuming you're on top of the job description. What attributes related to the job are they trying to assess? Once you understand this, it then helps you, remember, arrange your answer to match yourself to meet, their requirements for that attribute. As an example, they might ask you, tell us a situation where your ideas were criticized. If you ask yourself, what's the question behind that question? Of course, they're trying to check how would you operate, within a team situation where you are receiving criticism, right? They want to hear what would your response to criticism be? How strong are your interpersonal skills, your emotional intelligence? How mature are you? And so your answer must speak to those things, right? Now, not all interviewers are trained. If you meet a less skilled interviewer, they might ask you something like, do you have children? And that's what this same thing of how do you manage people when you are not in agreement with them or when they are not in agreement with you is what they're trying to assess. But they've used an amateur way, right, to ask you the question. So always is important to try and understand what is the question behind the question. And typically it comes from two things: having a firm grasp of the role as they have described it, and having a firm grasp of their context, their organization, what challenges are they facing internally, externally. That's what gives you the intelligence, right, to be able to decipher, okay, with this question, what and what and what, and of course simple logic. It's important for you to be able to read the actual question. Let me move. So let's go now, right? So I mean, that was a very quick. As an executive, those 4 tips I've shared with you are very essential if you're going to make any headway, right, in really answering properly. Just the general guidelines. Now, I'll just go to 2 specific questions. Of course, there's a plethora of possible questions. And when I coach you through preparing for your interview, what I do is I have a bank of questions that are most frequently asked, which I actually prepare you with, right? In addition to giving you a framework to tackle any question anyway. But I'm just going to answer 2 of those questions. The very first one, and this is because in the some key leadership skills in any organization, right? Well, being able to give strategic direction is always one. But right after that is always, are you able to lead change? And a lot of people, struggle with that change management question. So I thought I should tackle it in this broadcast. So if you were asked, how would you go about delivering change in an organization? It's really about stepping back and thinking about change management. So what are the key, critical steps? Yeah, right. And you share a framework that can be applied within any organizational context. Here's how I would answer it. Yeah, using this rough framework. Now, around change, there are 5 main things you need to do. You must understand, the context. What context are we in? What challenge are we facing? Therefore, what change needs to be made? right? So so the first thing to do is to understand, right? As I've said, organizational context. Where are we? Where do we need to go? Do we need to tackle? What would be the key drivers of success for us to get to where we need to go? And what's our SWOT relative to, where we need to go? That's your initial analysis. Once you've understood that, the next step would be then, so based on the findings understanding our context, then the answers to those questions will tell us where we need to go, what we need to look out for if we're going to succeed. What's the burning platform, right? Why must we change now? What's the burning platform for that change? Then you move, using those insights, you go to action planning. That's another area where many change efforts often fail, right? They often fail for a couple of reasons. One, if you put together a plan that is not actionable, that has not been thought through, if you don't have a clear roadmap, you can get lost in the woods, on the one hand, right? On the other hand, if the organization across board is not involved, the people who have to execute the change have to be involved in the action planning. That way you're testing for real life to a certain extent, right, as you go along. So I would say action planning. I would create a clear roadmap with actionable steps to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to go. And I would consider short, medium, and long-term strategies. I would, and then at this point, you speak to your experience from the past. How have you, done action planning in the past, right? And how would you bring it in here? So step 2, action planning. Step 3, and this is the biggest component, the people component. If you check any of the statistics about change, right, the biggest reason why change efforts fail is the people. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I think I'm laughing because, based on my own experience of doing change implementations, the plans can be all rosy, beautiful spreadsheets. Then bring it to the people and let them execute. That's where you see all sorts of malfunctioning. So if you do not, take care of the people component ab initio, then you have a problem. People are very big, right? And so, 2 things that you must do with people. First, as a leader, you must be skilled. So I would be skilled at identifying and assessing the key people throughout the organization, not just at leadership level. Who are the key people that need to influence this change, drive this change, deliver this change? Identify them. And from the very beginning, get them on board, right? In defining why we need to change, the burning platform, in defining what the change would be, in planning how we would change, in executing how we change, right? That gives them ownership. That takes care of alignment, because you're taking from across the organization, right? So you're sharing vision and ownership with your people, right? Then it speaks to this. Then we go to the next thing, communication. Still around that people. So communication. A huge challenge in any change is communication. It's important to be able to clearly define the vision, give people where to go to get answers, create a mechanism to get feedback so that you're adapting. Because as I've identified, many plans often, there are very few plans that go exactly. Once real life comes, changes, you meet resistance, right? And so you have to have a way of taking feedback on board and quickly adapting, right? So that's where communication, in communicating, you'll be identifying key stakeholders, creating the messages up front, enabling constant feedback loop, and sharing ownership. You will be aware that you must use communication as a tool for alignment and for maintaining traction. So that's the 4th component. Last but not least, resourcing. That's another reason why many change projects, right, fail. People don't have, we've made this we've identified the change, we've made these beautiful plans. In planning, we identified resources, we have an action plan. When it comes to resources, a lot of the time the organization falls short. So it would be my role as a leader to ensure that people have the resources that they need to make this change happen, right? And even where maybe we fall short in the resources, I must be available, to work through. So how do we adapt? So in resourcing, it is leadership, tools, motivation, right, and responsiveness for flexibility and agility. That's how I will go about implementing change in the organization. I hope you catch my drift. So it's essentially, and you don't have to use this exact framework. I'm using this exact framework based on my experience and my knowledge of challenges that organizations face, right, when implementing change. You can add to it, you can remove from it, but always think it through and answer with a framework that they can see how clearly it applies within general context and to their organization in particular. All right, so last but not least, what's your weakness? I'm laughing because every time we ask this question, it's people are really creative. So first of all, I can tell you free of charge that the answer to what's your weakness is not I like work too much or I'm a perfectionist, I like to get things perfect. Please, we can see through you. You're trying to pass off a strength as a weakness. Don't do that. Listen, at senior level, there's no time to play those kinds of games. So, how do you answer the what's your weakness question? So first of all, right, the weakness you choose to share or the weaknesses you choose to share is not personality. Do not, right, share a personal weakness, not a personality trait, because remember, when you have negative news, let me try and put this in a framework. Okay, so when you want to communicate something negative, the first thing you do is distance it from yourself. So you don't, for instance, deliver bad news in an active voice. You use a passive voice. You want to separate yourself from it and put it in a small box so that it looks manageable to whoever you're giving the bad news to, right? Same principle. If you share a personal trait, I then associate it with you and it's difficult to separate it. That's one. Two, remember, people get hired for skill and get fired for attitude. So as recruiters and as employers, we're constantly looking now to hire for attitude. So if you come and you tell me a person that's an attitudinal issue, it's very hard to change, or rather, it's hard for the organization to change, right? And so you don't want to give them a problem that it will be hard for them to solve. So distance yourself. You should share a skill-based or a work-based problem. So first, not a personality trait, skills-based, work-based, something that, is easy to change, right? And then something that occurs within given a certain context or frame of reference, right? So I'm impatient immediately raises, this person is going to come and fight with people, right? But if I say, well, whenever I have a deadline looming, right, I have the tendency to push people, right, towards meeting that deadline. And in the past, it has caused people to crack under pressure. Stay with me. So I wouldn't stop there. So first of all, I've defined it. It's only when there's a deadline looming. And of course, there will be many deadlines. So what have I done about it? I've learned to be a lot more proactive, right, in anticipating deadlines. I've also learned how to put in, early warning systems, right, in the way I lay out tasks, and to share this perspective with the people I work with, right? So that we try, yes, emergencies will happen, but as much as possible, how can we manage our workflow so that we're proactively, dealing with things and not rushing, right? But even when there's an emergency, if you have an agreed way to deal with things and report things, then, for instance, if you have a central collaborative place where everybody, as they're taking their actions, is showing up, you are calling people less often, and you're just going there and checking, right? And encouraging people to check in with you by themselves, that kind of answer, right? But so it shouldn't be a personality trait. It has to be something to do with the job. It has to be something that's easy to fix, or that you can lay a roadmap out to fix, right? Then the other important thing, remember, is you have to show that you've taken steps, right, to fix it. Like if you refer to the answer that I gave, example I gave you just now. However, there's a warning here. Do not pick a weakness that is directly related to the core requirements of the job. I can't be applying for, say, a finance director role and say I hate math or I'm weak with my numerical skills. I can't. Or I have a challenge with attention to detail. Every self-respecting recruiter will select me out of the process, right? So, whilst you must be honest, right? Pick a smaller weakness, please, that is not related to the core function of the role, that you have identified and that you have fixed. Typically, it's usually around working with people. Things like, especially at leadership level, how do you manage conflict? How do you manage delegation? And don't make it up. Actually assess yourself. Pick your weak areas. Pick, not one directly related to the role, and something that you've done something about. It can be a knowledge gap, for example, right? Which you can take training for, which you can show what work you have done to close that knowledge gap. Okay. Now, so I like to think about it in terms of that negative feedback sandwich, right? In this case, it would be, my opening answer will show, first of all, self-awareness. I'm aware of myself, and in looking at myself, I've identified this and why it is a weakness, right? Then I'll speak to the issue. Then I will speak to the positive. So positive self-awareness, in the middle, the issue, then the close of the sandwiches. What steps have I taken to improve? Okay, so let me just try and make it use a framework to answer. So it would be, remember I said make it small and put it in a box. So in this situation, right, I tend to, and this makes me seem like, and as a result, I have done this. Instead, now I do this. So let me walk back to the example I gave before. When in the situation where I have, looming deadlines, right, I tend to push my team, right, to work to, make sure that deadline is met. In the past, it has made me appear unsympathetic, maybe, or yeah, as if I was too demanding, right? As a result, I have developed early warning systems, sought to I deliberately set up communication routines, right? Proactive communication routines with my teammates. And we have a central place where everyone can see and track the progress of the project together. I've also learned how to communicate with different personality types, right? To be able to get the best results. Right now, I mean, so I've applied it, in this my past team and the team before that, and I've gotten much better results. But of course, I recognize that it is, work in progress. That kind of example, right? Okay, so that's how to tackle the weakness question. All right, so today has gone by really fast. That's it for today. Now, let me I should have at the beginning, but let me introduce myself now. My name is Ladijia. Of course, if this is the first time you are watching this program, I'm a career coach focused on mid to senior level professionals. I work, with ambitious, motivated mid to senior level professionals who are looking to land an amazing, high paying job, right, without having to go through, a tedious, frustrating job search process. I use, a proven job search process based on my experience. Of both. I've been on both sides. I'm a serial career changer. I've worked in several industries in different roles, so I know how this works from the candidate's perspective. But I've also been a HR consultant and recruiter and business owner in various sequences over the last 13 years. And that experience, coaching loads of people to go through interviews, training people also, people who've gone through redundancy, equips me uniquely to support, my people, as I like to call them, my coaches, through getting the jobs that they really want. So if you're looking for, coaching help to get to your next level, to land your next job, please feel free to contact to reach out to me. I'm Ladijia on LinkedIn. Our website is www.mycareerdrive.com. Last but not least, I'd like to share from this weekend, we're doing a personal branding bootcamp, working with senior level professionals to craft their brand, to create a resume, a high impact resume that gets you the interview every time, and a LinkedIn profile that attracts recruiters and employers. You can get the details on the from the website, but also on the what am I saying? On the program page, which is mycareerdrive.com/standard professional branding bootcamp. Okay, so that's it for this week. Now, if there's anything you'd like me to address in my next episode, I'm always open to, ideas. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next week.